Hello and welcome to the FEZ Show. We had an interesting race in Cape Town, which we're going to dissect today, as well as look ahead to the Sao Paulo E-Prix, which is taking place next week. Joining me on the show, as always, is the one and only Edward Hunter and Mr. Jack Pickering. Pickering, how are you?
I'm good, mate. Yeah, it's been a bit. Sorry for the absence, but yeah, it's looking forward to get back into it. And I'm counting down the days to Berlin, where I get to be back on site for the first time in forever.
Perfect. That means I've now got to do your application, so I will do that straight after this episode. Make sure that we definitely get to Berlin. Edward Hunter, how are you?
Oh, I'm good, thanks, Jack. It's great to be back. I'm not dead, by the way, in case anyone was wondering. But yeah, lots of great Formula E stuff to talk about, and as always, it just the excitement it never stops till the season ends. That's what I always say, or at least from now on, anyway.
The Saudis haven't got to Eds just yet. Just yet. Give it another few months.
They're close.
Yeah, you guys giving them tip-offs certainly doesn't help.
Hits have been put out, put it that way, on the black market. But anyway, moving on to Cape Town. It's kind of weird because at the beginning of the season, Jack, like we were like, oh, Jake Dennis, Pascal Wehrlein, right? And the season hasn't really gone like that. Now, it was a great race from Antonio Felix Da Costa and the moves that he pulled off, and we're going to talk about that in a minute. But I just wanted to start off by thinking, oh, we had this kind of narrative. We thought we had this narrative going after the first couple of races, thinking, okay, Porsche, Andretti, here we go. A two-horse race between Jake Dennis and Pascal Wehrlein. It looks like it's going to be an epic season. And it's already turned, even though Pascal and Dennis still got a decent gap, it's already starting to look like that might not be the case as we head into another new track in Sao Paulo.
Formula E never has narratives. I don't know what you're on about. So yeah, but yeah, it did seem to look like that from the first few races of the season. It did look like it was Porsche stronghold. However, I did say in the last FEZ show that we did that it would come to an end, and turns out I was right. I just chose the wrong driver. I chose the pole sitter instead of the race winner. As the season went on, we knew that it was going to close up, and the other teams would find a way to get closer to the Porsches, and they've done just that. So it's great to see Chev up there. It's great to see Nick Cassidy up there. But yeah, it's also good to see Da Costa, because when we last spoke, we said, oh, Da Costa and Lotterer aren't really at the races just yet. However, they've in Da Costa's case, he got a podium in Hyderabad and he got the win in Cape Town, and he's not far off the lead of the championship. I think that Wehrlein still has the lead in the championship by, I think, 12 points over Jake Dennis now. But Da Costa, I think, is only just outside of a race victory outside from his teammate Pascal Wehrlein. And so we are now starting. I think we still have some sort of a narrative, but it's now looking more like a five-way fight instead of just a two-horse race. But the thing is, 5 is fine as long as it's not 18 like it was a couple of years ago. Then I'm happy. I think we could go to something like, if we have 8 title contenders going into the last race, I think that's pretty good. I think British touring cars had that once a few years ago.
Yeah, well, to be honest with you, I think 5 would be nice going into like the end of the season, but I kind of would like to see like 1, 2, or 3 going into like the final race rather than 5, 6, 7. But Ed, I want to talk about Da Costa because yeah, we were asking the question like, where are you, right? The season 6 champion, like, you know, you've gone to Porsche and you know you were still really good at Checo last season, but you know Verlaine's doing great, and you'd expect Da Costa to be doing great, and he hasn't. But he's kind of answered those critics in the last 2 races, and the moves that he pulled off. Let's talk about those moves past Cassidy and past Verne to win the race. Like that was as strong of a drive from Antonio Felix Costa that I think we've ever seen.
I agree. I think last 2 races, Hyderabad and Cape Town, his races were impeccable, Jack. But the only problem, I would say, the only caveat is that he qualified really badly. He qualified 11th in Cape Town, I think 17th in Hyderabad, which meant he had to make these moves through the field. But when he did, boy, did he make them. And the move on Cassidy was a sort of big, sharp intake of breath kind of moment where You didn't think he was going to go for it. Cassidy lifted and coasted early, and he just slotted up the inside at this high-speed double apex sort of left-hander. And then he did this. He did a dummy on Vern. He sort of outfoxed Vern. It was so tight between the inside wall and to the side of Jev's car. There was only a Da Costa-sized gap to go for, and he went for it. So I think move of the season potentially, certainly a move of January so far. I think it was definitely one of the stronger candidates. But yeah, like we were saying about the narrative, I think Pascal Wehrlein has generally qualified better, but we saw a big mistake in Cape Town, hitting the back of Buemi and having to retire from the race. A potential win, I think, lost for Wehrlein if he'd been able to avoid that, because he didn't have anywhere near as many cars to pass as Da Costa. So Da Costa really, the door opened for him in many ways, and full credit to him, he absolutely made the most of his opportunity, even though he did miss attack mode later on, which again opened the door a little bit for Jev, who's been driving incredibly well himself, I think it's fair to say. So certainly, I think the way I see it, it's potentially a 4 or even 5 horse race if you put someone like Buemi or Cassidy in, who've definitely been getting some good results in the Envision. So, but yeah, as you say, full marks to Da Costa in Cape Town, full marks to Vern for his performance in Hyderabad as well. So I think it's anyone's guess who's going to win in Sao Paulo.
Indeed, and that's exactly in terms of Formula E, like what we were trying to say at the beginning. Like, we think we kind of know what's going on. We thought, okay, there's that narrative, and now we're kind of going into Sao Paulo thinking anyone could win really out of those, those front runners that we've said so far. I just want to look at the championship very quickly. I've just got it up here. So just Pascal Wehrlein's currently on 80 points. Now, Pico, I just want to come to you because obviously he did crash out, right? A bit of a rare mistake going into the back of Sebastian Buemi. Sebastian Buemi did really well to recover, though, to finish in 6th. It was one of those, he's built such a gap at the moment, Wehrlein. He's on 80 points, right? Jake Dennis is on 62. Werner's on 50 in 3rd. Da Costa is now, with that win and podium in Hyderabad, is up to 46. Nick Cassidy on 43. Buemi 41. So, and then Ras 38. And then Sam Bird at the moment looking pretty irrelevant. And Jaguar, we'll get onto that a little bit later. And their woes that they've had. But is it okay? Because he's won the first 2 race, Pico, Wehrlein, and then he got the 4th place in Hyderabad. He was allowed, I suppose, 1 slip up, but he can't afford too many slip ups this season.
Well, I think, yeah, I think if you're going for a title challenge, you cannot drop the ball. We saw that. I think it was season 3. Sebastian Buemi either won the race or DNF'd the entire season or was disqualified, because he missed the 2 races in New York. When I think he was 4th in Berlin and 4th in Montreal, both of which were disqualified. And so because of pure consistency, Lucas Di Grassi won the season 3 championship. And so, yeah, if it's not rocket science really. To win the championship, you need to do consistently well over the course of the season. We saw that with Stoff last year. And so yeah, he's slipped up here, but the thing is, it's just gonna be a rare mistake. I'm not sure whether it was a problem with the brakes or something just going into turn 10, but yeah, he ran Buemi and it messed up his suspension, and that was that. So yeah, he dropped the ball there, but it's not gonna be I'd be surprised if it happens multiple times over the course of this season. I'm sure as we head to Sao Paulo, he'll be back up there fighting for race wins.
Yeah, and I suppose if you're Pascal, right, take the DNF out. If he was in this position, let's say scoring points in all 4 races and was this many points ahead, 18 points ahead, he'd take that, right, at this stage of the season. So even though he's had that DNF, I think he'd take where he is currently. Ed, I wanted to move on slightly. There's a couple of teams I want to talk about. One is Mahindra. So we're going to start with Mahindra first, because obviously they didn't take part in qualifying and they didn't take part in the race. And I want to let you explain the reasons to why that happened.
Okay, so oh, sorry about that. So this whole thing started with free practice 2 in Cape Town, where I think they were noticing some sort of issue with I believe it was it Nico Muller or was it Kelvin van der Linde's car, where it essentially developed an issue with the the rear suspension was sort of flexing under a lot of strain through turn 9 and 10 effectively, and they decided to sort of abandon from the event because they thought it was too big of a risk. They had to basically withdraw. And so big disappointment, of course, for the entire Mahindra team and the app team because they use the same rear suspension and powertrain parts. So, and of course, the rear suspension is one of the things that fairly recently, I think, got opened up to the teams in Gen 3 as well. So there's obviously, what I've heard from the race, I'm not sure if it's entirely true, but I've heard that a lot of the other teams use a different material, and Mahindra decided to use titanium, I think, and that apparently has been the cause of their flexing under high pressures. They are apparently going to make changes. They knew about the issue pre-season as well, which is what I found really fascinating. Instead of pre-season testing, they sort of experienced it, but I think they either thought they'd sorted the issue or they didn't think there would be enough high-speed corners for it to be a problem. And especially with Cape Town having that chicane taken out about a week before the race at turn 9, which is where the trouble sort of started because they were going in at such high speed. That seems to be what caught them out. So they should be all okay for Sao Paulo, especially because it's Lucas Di Grassi's home race. So I think there are probably going to be 1 or 2 riots if they don't let him in this time. But I think it's a little bit embarrassing for Mahindra, but ultimately they made the right call in terms of safety, not to just send a car out on track that might have the rear suspension disintegrate. And we saw in qualifying at that corner, loads of crashes happen, even without like broken cars already. So for like Mortara and Bird and Boemi, of course. So yeah, it's a very high profile blunder, but I think Frederick Bertrand will get it sorted out, and Mahindra will be back to form in Sao Paulo.
Pico,
Can I just
okay, go.
Can I just say that there was a blessing in the fact that Mahindra didn't take part, in the fact that we got Kelvin van der Linde in commentary, and honestly, I just wanted to hear everything that he wanted to say during that. He was fantastic as a commentator. Loved it.
And so much better than PK Jr. as well, who sounds
no,
like
I love
so
PK
bored.
Jr.
Oh, he's a great character, but he doesn't come across well in commentary.
He's
in my opinion.
favorite. There's no dissing Nelson PK Jr. on this show.
No, you cannot diss Nelson PK. He's my pizza friend.
Yeah, exactly. There's no dissing Nelson PK Jr., man. One of my favorite people to interview. One of my favorite characters. I loved speaking to him. Yeah, but that's his personality. It's like having Robin Frines in the interview, in the commentary box. I suppose it wouldn't be that thrilling, but it's still insightful. But anyway, moving away from commentary and who's great and who's not great, I wanted to talk about. I've lost my train of thought now because of that. Pico, what I wanted to say was, they knew about this issue from preseason testing, right? And if it was a safety concern, and I know we've got the hardware and all this is all halted, should they have been allowed to, maybe they couldn't redevelop it or make some significant change to the package that they had sent in? Because I felt, yes, it was very embarrassing for Mahindra and bad, but it was bad for Formula E that we lost 4 cars, right? And people pay the money to come and see 22 Formula E electric cars, and you only see 18. And for me, I was like, it's not a good look for Formula E. So if something like this was to happen, is there any scope? Do you think there should be any scope for teams to go, all right, let's put our hands up let's at least try and fix it on the grounds of safety, because that's what it is.
Also, it was a home race for Kelvin van der Linde, who was supposed to take the start, and so yeah, I feel that there were quite a lot of disappointed South Africans in the crowd there. But yeah, with this, I was absolutely astounded that they knew about this issue going into the season, and then had only realised, and then with everything that happened on the Saturday, then yeah, it was it was quite embarrassing for Formula E, really. But yeah, I know that the FIA and Mahindra are now working to find a solution ahead of Cape Town, but yeah, it was not a pleasant moment, because it wasn't just because losing 4 cars was bad enough, but then we also lost Sam Bird from the race after his qualifying crash, and so we were down to 7 Ts, which is a joint low Punta del Este season 2. I think I remember Toby.
And then the other person is Mortara, because then he had issues and he pulled out. So then you're down to 16, and then Pascal Wehrlein decided to crash out. So you're down to 15 cars after the first lap of the race.
Then both Evans and Dennis got drive-throughs, which meant that they weren't going to get any points on the day. And so it was basically a free-for-all in terms of points. And then Gunter crashed out, and so everything happened in Cape Town. Basically, is the long and short of it. If you haven't seen it, why are you listening to this? Go back and watch it.
No, indeed. As I said, it was one of those where you're just thinking, well, if we know about this problem, then surely we should have done something to rectify it, so we don't go into a race. Because for me, if it's happened once, it can happen again, right? It could happen again, and all of a sudden, with Mahindra putting out of another race weekend as another team, because I knew rear suspensions for other teams were an issue too. But I want to move on, and we'll talk about Maserati now, because it was a kind of a mixed fortune day, Ed, in terms of Maximilian Gunther. Boom! Right, start with the positives. What a slight qualifying performance from him, and unfortunately for him, as we've just mentioned, he couldn't convert that in the race. Had a great start, managed to take the lead of the race as well in a kind of a dodgy circumstance under the full course yellow, whether when it was slowing down or not. But took the lead of the race, was under investigation for that, whether to see if he did it in time or not in time, and if the race leader at the time, I think it was Fenestraz, at the time maybe broke a bit too early and slowed down a bit too early before the full course yellow was called or active. But then obviously he crashes out all by himself, just taps the wall, and all that hard work comes to an end. But from the start of the season that we've had from Gunther, though, it was, I would say, a positive showing, but he needs to show more of that.
Yeah, certainly. I think Mortara has generally eclipsed. I think the moment that Gunther's been on the back foot from was, and I'm assuming this happened in Diriyah, which is I think before the first race there, where he crashed in qualifying and had to miss the race there. So that really put him kind of on the back foot. He was having a better race in Hyderabad until basically Sam Bird unfortunately kind of lost the plot a little bit and crashed into his teammate Fenestraz, and sort of Gunther was going for attack mode at that exact moment. So instead he found a Jaguar right where the attack mode activation spot was, which basically destroyed his race there. And then, as you say, Cape Town qualified extremely well, got to the final, just lost out to Fenestraz in the end, who put in a superb lap. I think it's the fastest ever Formula E lap. Admittedly, a lot of that's due to layout as well, but Fenestraz, he really put his heart on the line in that lap. I think it was exceptional. There was even a pigeon that was like, was it some sort of bird that was seagull actually, wasn't it? That was right next to him on that pole lap, which was pretty hilarious on the inside at like turn 8, turn 9 or something. And anyway, but Gunther, as you say, held off Nick Cassidy really well. There was that moment with the full course yellow for, I think it was for Wehrlein crashing out, and also Mortara suddenly came to a stop at the same time. It was an interesting one because I think Gunther reacted later than Fenestraz, definitely, but he seemed to think, well, the dash on my I was given the message, and the dash on my lights sort of when they were still going when Fenestraz stopped. So I thought I didn't have to stop, and that was a legitimate move. But the stewards clearly thought differently, and I think it's a sort of a knock-on effect of sort of the miscommunication for sort of trackside stewarding, and also sort of what the drivers are seeing on the steering wheel and on their team radio and stuff like that. And Gunther sort of asked immediately the team, oh, should I give it back? Should I give it back? And they didn't say anything. So he just kept the lead. And then eventually, I think, lost it later on anyway after taking attack mode. And of course, as you say, crashing out in a sort of easy moment. And he was so frustrated about it. You heard him saying, man, after he crashed into the wall. And you could tell Gunther thought that he was on for a great result, and sort of knew it was kind of his own fault, a little bit like Wehrlein as well, where he instantly copped up to crashing into the back of Buemi. So I think it's there's something for Gunther to build on here. It's certainly the shoots of recovery for both, not only DS, who've got some good podiums and a win, of course, but also Maserati, who've got the same package underneath them. James Roster's a very good team principal. He should be able to, well, he was a very good sporting director at Techeetah anyway. So you got to think Maserati could be able to turn this around a little bit and sort of start getting on the podium, start getting some more consistent results, because the luck's just not been with them lately. I think that's their big Achilles heel at the moment. They just ran out of luck at Maserati.
Yeah, that's why I wanted to talk about Pico, because I suppose we could even play a jingle at this moment if we were that clever enough and go Formula E bashing moment again. Because yes, Mortara, unlucky, right? He crashes out in qualifying, and then obviously you get the Sam Bird incident, which qualified, and there was no yellow flag that seems to be waved at all to stop the Sam Bird incident. And obviously James Barkley was furious because yes, Sam Bird has done he hasn't crashed into Mortara. He did the exact same crash as Mortara at the same spot, but obviously he wouldn't have done it if there was a yellow flag being waved and he was told to slow down. Talk about that slightly, and then Mortara as well, because a team of Venturi that it was last season to have so much success, it's been a horrible start to the year for Maserati.
It has, definitely. One thing that I will say on the full course yellow thing that Ed was talking about, I think something similar happened to Pierre Gasly when he stood in for Bohemian Season 3. That's because he wasn't too familiar with the rules, but I can't fully remember what the circumstances were with that. But with Maserati, what is going on with them at the moment? Because they have the same powertrain as DS. With their Maserati is a badge DS for the moment, but they're struggling to extract it. Obviously, it was lovely to see Gunter up at the top during qualifying, but Mortara was just unlucky. We saw Buemi have the same accident the day beforehand in free practice 1, and then I'm not sure what the marshals were doing. Were they having a cuppa at that point in time?
It was
if you see a crash, you get the yellow out immediately. Like even on the lights, they didn't show up saying that yellow in front. And so because Sam was told that there was an incident, but because it had only just happened, they couldn't really work out where on the track it was. And so they just just keep on going, we'll get back to you. And by the time he sees Mortara, he tries to spin out of it, and and the thing is, when we were watching it live, literally we cut to Mortara being stopped, and then you just see Sam sliding into view, and you just knew at that point something massive was going to happen. And I'll be honest, I was just delighted that those two walked away, because I screamed when when the impact happened, because I just
Well, it was shocking. It was shocking.
It was shocking, and it was but it was even more shocking that the marshals didn't really do anything. Which I mean, it's disappointing. I'm hoping that the FIA have perhaps had a word with them during the day. After that, be like, yo, what the hell was that?
It wasn't a good look,
we'll
honestly. See. Again, as I said, the Formula E bashing moment, we seem to do a couple of these on the show.
There's always one. There's always one.
There's always one. But you could probably fill a good episode of all the Formula E bashing moments that we've done.
Just do a special,
special.
After like
season 1, race 1.
During season 9 and season 10, we'll just have a why we hate Formula E FEZ Show special.
And it just gets increasingly petty as it goes on.
Yeah, exactly.
The LED
I'll just be drunk halfway through it. I hate everything.
No, but in all seriousness, it was not a good look. But then we lost 2 cars from that, because obviously Mortara they did fix, and so forth. Bird didn't make it. Mortara's car they fixed but couldn't get out. So it didn't work basically once it done its first lap. So it was pretty pointless. So that's what you're down to 16 cars immediately. And then, as we said earlier, with Pascal Wehrlein crashing on the first lap, you're down to 15 cars, and it just was like, it just had a bit of an anticlimax kind of start to race, it can happen. This is kind of a bit of a curveball, lads. Not really just thought about this before we discuss the show, but I'm now thinking about the time limits between sessions and how long qualifying is. I think for me, qualifying is too long. in terms of it being a 1 hour and 15-minute session, which doesn't really help teams when there is a accident like this. I think qualifying is too long and probably needs to be shortened, because if we want cars to, if they crash in qualifying, fine, it can happen, right? It can happen. But then you've got like 2 hours and a half window, basically, a really small window. It used to be 3 hours. Now you've got half an hour less, effectively, to get the cars out in time for the race. So surely I think, because we're moving practice 1 to a Friday now pretty consistently, I don't want to say start FP too early, because, oh my God, we start Formula E events early enough. But surely something needs to be done to make sure that engineers get the chance to fix a car and maybe get qualifying to a 45-minute session. And then away we go. They got more time to fix a car if something goes wrong. Pico.
Enter Lucas Di Grassi. So this is a conversation that I had with him.
The man, the myth, the legend that has a solution to everything. Here we go. I'm listening.
Look at me. I get to speak to Lucas Di Grassi. Wow. No, this was a conversation that we had in Monaco, because it was me. I think Toby was there from eFormula D, and some few others. But obviously it was the start. Like Gen 3 had just been launched, and we were talking about like race formats and everything like that, and what's probably best. And he came up with the scrap the 1 day format, but make it so that you have 1 day, which is 2 practices and a qualifying, and then day 2, which is 2 races. So you have a sprint, and then you have the feature race in the afternoon. I cannot remember all of the stuff, because this happened 10 months ago.
Yeah, but let's take this tangent and go full force with it, because Ed, I'm going to come to you on this. I want to hear your thoughts. I like this idea of a 2-day event, because you get the practice and qualifying, done on Fridays, but to me, you've got to open it up. And what infuriates me, as thinking with my fan hat on, is that I've paid, if you're going to the London E-Prix, you're paying £50 or £100 for your ticket, but you lose 30 minutes of track action to Friday, because no one's there. No one's there on Friday, unless you go to the turn 9 stand on XL's tube station and look over from Custom House. Otherwise, you're not allowed in the event. So you've paid £100, but you've missed 30 minutes of track time. I'd rather pay £100 for the 2 days, let's say, right? And then you've got your practice and qualifying in the evening. I would like that. It'd be a bit tough though on a Friday, but maybe Friday you can have your practices during the day, but maybe try and get someone in Friday evening. But I don't know how you do that. I feel like you need some sort of support event, because people coming in from work or taking the day off, I don't know, it's a bit more of a challenge, and especially viewing figures. If you've got to, I know Formula 1 can get away with it, maybe less so with Formula E. But I do like the idea of a 2-day, or a single, or even if it's a single practice session on a Friday with a qualifying session in the evening, late evening time, before the sun sets, and then a practice session on Saturday, or like a warm-up session, sprint race, feature race. I like the idea of that. What do you think?
I don't know. I feel like the whole point of the 1 day event was for practicality reasons. With these races in city centers, it's all about trying to make sure that it's in a lot of cases as least disruptive as possible. I think you could get away with it with some venues, maybe the likes of maybe Mexico, London XL, because it's not using that.
Sorry to butt in,
but
my counter argument to that is, if every Friday practice is now on a Friday, then we're not doing it over 1 day anymore.
There's only one that isn't on a Friday, which is Monaco. Monaco will have the full. It's all in 1 day.
Okay, but every other
event this year will have Friday practice 1.
So we're no longer doing it on 1 day. Back to your point, Ed.
Okay, well, do I have to counter this point now as well? My thoughts are it's sort of happened because they need we have the shakedown, and then we have FP1 after, essentially, don't we, on the Fridays? So that, to me, we were already having shakedowns on the Fridays, and now we've just got a more concrete sort of FP1 session as well. So I don't think it's as big a change as we're sort of making out from the first couple of seasons. Well, although admittedly we did have some very, very late shakedowns in the first season in some venues. But I certainly agree with the point that the 2 points, qualifying takes too long. I'm not sure how you can actually physically shorten it down and keep it fair as we go and make it.
Group stages are too long.
Okay, the group stages are too long. Well, I guess we've only got 2 of them, which is good. But like you said, there's 11 cars in each of them. So I don't have a solution to sort of tweak the format other than, I don't know, maybe for the actual duels, just to make it so that the cars are charged up a bit more. I don't know, so we don't have these big gaps in between the several duels starting. So it's a bit more like Super Bowl, where they're out one after another.
But put this question, sorry, Pico.
The main reason for the duels is because they need to cool down the cars and then get them cycled again.
Yeah, that was my question, because it's like they don't need to be recharged. As long as they've got battery life, they can go as fast as there's no fuel in them.
Yeah, I was being stupid there. Pico's right.
but to cool them down, but you've got 8 minutes between the semi-final and the final. I think it is. It's a long time, and then you've got the time in between. The quarterfinals are not too bad, but the groups are 12 minutes. Do we need 12 minutes to do? You could half.
And the other thing was, especially in season 8, we were getting a lot of times where in the middle of the group stages, everyone would come in to change tires, essentially. So I know the Hankooks are a lot harder than the Michelin, so we don't see that as often, at least, unless it's a heat sensitive track where the tires overheat quite easily. Like I think we've had a couple ones, like Hyderabad comes to mind, for instance. But yeah, I think it's interesting. I would love to see have the format sort of written down to see how it would work before I sort of commit to, or maybe it's a good idea to commit to sort of fully 2-day things. But I certainly think having sprint races as well. I think I'm not the biggest fan of in Formula One. I'm not sure. It might feel less jarring in Formula E because I think it's sort of a short format anyway. And we've got, of course, the timed races have gone now. We've gone back to laps. And in Cape Town, we had a very short race. Actually, it was less than 45 minutes. Yeah. So I think there's definitely room for some shorter either support events. We have got the category, is it Ace GP that Dilbag Gill and Nick Heidfeld are involved in? This sort of there's supposed to be a junior category. We've got another one that's in the UK that I think I forget exactly what the company is, but Mark Preston's talked about it quite recently.
Yeah, I'm gonna
that looks quite promising. So yeah, there's definitely a lot to think about there.
Because as much as I love this show going on random tangents that we go on, I'm looking at the time and I'm looking at.
You gave me a big question there.
Everything I wanted to, but I was like, oh, you want to do it well. But I want to talk about Jaguar because, again, Pico. They're quick. We know they're super quick, but luck again. Evans getting the drive-through penalty for basically an overpower software thing, which we saw Envision get as well. Sam Bird obviously with the crash. It just, for one reason or another, the season just hasn't worked. But we know once they get it right, they're going to be up there. But luck is not on their side at the moment.
Oh yeah, absolutely. We've seen this year the resurgence of Sam Bird really with that third place in Diriyah, and he's been fighting at the front. But it's just like they were very unlucky in Hyderabad when Bird locked up and went into Mitch, and that caused that kerfuffle there. And then they were Sam unlucky with the accident in qualifying, and then Mitch unlucky with his thing. It's just a thing of luck. They just need to they've had all the bad karma now. They need to get some good karma over the course of the next few races.
Indeed. And then another team I want to talk about. Well, I say team, mainly one driver at the moment, Ed. And that's Sascha Fenestraz. Because obviously he got pole, and I think we got to talk about him because being a rookie, we always say being a rookie in Formula E is incredibly difficult. And for Sascha to come in and do what he's done at Nissan, and people have been saying, like, we've spoken to a couple of drivers and, they've been hyping up the Nissan. And Sascha's kind of put that to bed at the moment, said, Nissan's here to fight. And under Fenestraz at the moment, he's doing a good job.
Yeah, he's certainly impressed with his point scoring finish. Obviously, he was so unlucky, sort of him and Cassidy ended up in a crash in Cape Town on the final lap, I think. And Fenestraz said something like he was alluding to his rivalry with Cassidy in Japan. He says, "Oh, it's like he thinks we're in Japan again," or something like that. After they basically made contact and Fenestraz found himself in the wall. But other than that, yeah, the qualifying lap was superb. I felt if it wasn't for the full course yellow after Gunfer crash, where him and Cassidy both went for attack mode, and then Fenestraz especially just sort of wasted it, unfortunately. But by the time they committed, Scott Elkins was already calling the full course yellow. So I think that was what really took him out of contention to fight with Da Costa and Verne for the win. But certainly, I think there's going to be more opportunities. I wouldn't be surprised if Fenestraz does get that podium. And Norman Nato's been a bit quiet and under the radar by comparison. I think Fenestraz is the bright, exciting talent in the field that we got to look forward to, as well as the likes of Dan Ticktum, Sergio Sede Camara has been doing quite well as well. And we've got Jake Hughes, of course, impressing in that McLaren, also for the Nissan powertrain and getting a pole himself.
Indeed. So what I want to do now, then, we'll talk a little bit about Andretti, because Pico, Andretti, they didn't have the greatest of race. And again, it was kind of a weird situation where they didn't have the correct tire pressures for Jake Dennis at the start, which cost him a drive through and cost him a chance to get points. It's kind of a silly error that at this stage in Formula E you really shouldn't be doing.
Yeah, it was basically the track in Cape Town. It was very bumpy, and when they go over the bumps, the power that will go to the energy basically goes over to 250 kilowatts. I almost said 200. We're back to Gen 2, everyone. No, so yeah, occasionally that happens, and that's what happened to Mitch and Jake in Cape Town. And yeah, it's a shame that happened, but I'm sure they'll both bounce back very easily when we come to like the next few races.
Yeah, and it's one of those things where for a team you can't make these mistakes, because the championship is going to get tight very quickly, and if you make these kind of mistakes, you're going to lose that momentum effectively, and then one mistake becomes another mistake later on, and then all of a sudden you're like, if we didn't do this, we'd still be up here, but we did this, and now we're down here. So I suppose the only other real team then to talk about, Ed, is Envision, because they're doing what Envision do like every season, right? And there's just being super solid with Buemi. A great recovery drive from being hit to finishing the points, and then Nick Cassidy again on the podium. They're one of those teams, Envisions, like they probably should win a championship at some point, I feel, because they're always there and they're always super consistent. It just hasn't worked out. It's going to be, I think, tough for them again. I think they're quick. Obviously, they've got the Jaguar powertrain, same as the Jaguars, obviously. But they just don't seem to have that, I don't know, there's like a little piece of the puzzle. It's like a tiny piece that they just seem to miss every season. Now, hopefully for them, this season they can find it.
Yeah, I felt convinced for a while that Cassidy had Cape Town in the bag until that final full course yellow, where he basically wasted. He still got the lead because Da Costa didn't quite get past him, but he essentially wasted an attack mode, and that made him easy meat for Da Costa in the end. And Buemi, like we said earlier, taken out by Verline and then had to grit his way back through the field. Impressively got back up to fifth by the end. I think he overtook Dan Ticktum on the final lap for that fifth position. So I certainly wouldn't be surprised to see Envision winning a race later this season. And I wouldn't count either driver out for the title. Like you said, I think because they've been a customer team, we always sort of count them out in our minds a little bit when maybe we shouldn't. Because they always, of all the customer teams, I think maybe them and Andretti are the two standouts really that always seem to impress us. So there's a couple others here and there, like I guess Venturi, Maserati also comes to mind, and McLaren too. But I think Envision really stands out in Formula E especially.
Yeah, and they're a good team. They got good history of it. Remember when they had the Audi powertrain and they were performing better than the Audi team, which is it's always interesting. But I suppose now we should do a quick, small look ahead to Sao Paulo. There's another new track, so it's like the last of the new track sequences that we're going through from Cape Town, Hyderabad, and now Sao Paulo. Great to have a race in Brazil as well, obviously for Lucas Di Grassi, and there's been years and years and years, even to race season one when we were supposed to be going to Rio de Janeiro. I can't believe that's nearly 10 years ago now, and there's been this hint for a Brazilian race, and we finally got it. And I'm just going to talk about the track, because the track, Pico, it's got quite a lot of long straights, a couple of turns here and there with a chicane. So energy management could be quite interesting. But like Cape Town, which was really interesting that Ed mentioned it, because I was going to mention it earlier, if it was a 45-minute race, we wouldn't have made it. And it'd be interesting to see if Cape Town's, sorry, not Cape Town, Sao Paulo is something similar.
Sorry, need to find the unmute button there. Yeah, it's going to be an interesting race. I know that Lucas has been working hard on this for years, because even when we were supposed to go a few years ago, well, no, that was season 3. Dear Lord, yeah, that is that is a while ago. No, but they've been working on this for years, and yeah, they're using part of the old IndyCar circuit that they used from 2013 to, it was like 2016, I think they used it. But yeah, it's not the full layout like they used for IndyCar, so they've taken that and they've changed it a bit. But I still think it's going to be an interesting one. I'm intrigued that there's a chicane on the front straight. I didn't know that until now. But yeah, the rest of the the rest of the circuit, it still looks good. I think it can prove some good overtaking zones into squinting, turn 7, turn 10. Maybe some into turn 1 as well. But that pit lane looks a little bit short. But I'm assuming that they'll have the either side ones with the pit lane running down the middle like they had in Hong Kong and the first few years in New York. So, but yeah, I'm really looking forward to this one, because I know how much Lucas wants, has wanted this for years, and yeah, I think it's going to be an interesting race. And based on the season that we've had so far, I think we've had a good season so far. If we could just continue that on into Sao Paulo next weekend. Unmute.
So I'm looking at the track maps, right? I'm looking at the track maps, and I was just like, I was just looking at track maps on Google, and then I was like, oh yeah, and then I was like, oh, well, hold on, there's like 3 or 4 different layouts to this potential track. But what I'm seeing is kind of what you said, but there seems to be like a lot of long straights there. So the start finish straight is really long, and then we've got like the chicane, and we've got a really long back straight to another chicane, then another long straight, then a little bit of a turn, a decent straight, and then 10 and 11 to finish us off, which is just a little point and squirt, it looks like. But yeah, it looks like energy management could be quite quick. But again, lap times could be quite quick on this one, because there isn't many major braking zones. So again, like, it'd be interesting to see how many laps that we do and whether or not we get to that 45-minute race length.
Oh, Wikipedia has a chicane, the official site does not. So I'd like to retract my my initial thing. The overtaking zones will be turn 1, turn 4, and turn 7. Apologies.
Yeah, that tracks, I guess. But yeah, I think it's really hard to say. I kind of miss tracks like Hyderabad, where we'd already have names for all the corners. I feel like having just 11. I guess it's 11, or is it 10 corners if we haven't got the first chicane now? But
11.
11. It's still 11. Okay, right. So I feel like that hairpin, which is effectively going to be turn 3, I think that could be a very good overtaking opportunity. I agree with these high speed, these long straights. Certainly, you're going to see a lot of lifting and coasting into some of the longer sort of entries into the braking zones, especially for the chicanes and such. So I feel it's going to play again really into the hands of the Porsche powertrains, like we saw in Diriyah as well. So I wouldn't be surprised to see a Porsche powertrain car on the top step of the podium at the end of the race. But certainly great to have a race in Brazil and South America in general, because remember, we used to have Punta del Este, Buenos Aires back in the day, and and even Chile, Santiago. So we seem to don't have any of those anymore. So it's great that we have got Sao Paulo on the calendar to represent that part of the world.
Turns out all the best circuits come from South America. Santiago, Buenos Aires, and Punta del Este. All of them, I'd rank in my top 5 Formula E tracks of all time.
Interesting stat. Interesting thought, really, from Mr. Pickering there. The problem is, right, and we kind of discussed it a little bit earlier in the show, is like I can't predict, and I know like we're trying to think, I'm trying to preview, and I'm finding it harder and harder and harder now to preview Formula E events because Ed, I don't know what's going to happen.
No, I seem to for some reason because we've been doing with our partners at Grid Network. We've been doing a predictor thing, and I predicted half of the Formula E races right. I'm about 7 up of all the races that Grid Network do. I think I've got 7 points. The next best is I think Josh with 3 or something like that.
Well, you did predict Jake Dennis for the championship, so therefore
I did. Yeah,
you need to start giving us the lottery numbers or something.
Yeah, Jake also needs to.
I was about to say it's the Cheltenham Festival
pressure.
this week. So what horses do you have on?
Bet on Bugsby. Bugsby's galore.
I will look for that horse and see if it exists.
Anyway, but as for this, yeah, I really don't see it going any other way than Porsche. I feel like it could come down really to, but I think it's a 3-horse race in my mind between Jake Dennis and the 2 Porsche drivers. Lotter is not going to be there because he's going to be replaced by David Beckman, I believe, because there's a wet clash, I think. So Lotter is going to be driving for the Porsche Penske LMDH.
I think that's in Jakarta later this year. I don't.
Oh, is that Jakarta? Yeah. Oh, okay. Well, there's a clash. I can't remember where it is, but Lotterer has certainly been a bit off the boil recently, which is why I've not talked about him too much, sadly. But yeah, I really think if you want to go for an easy prediction, I would go for one of the Porsche powered cars. But I think maybe one of the Jaguar powered ones, maybe if you're feeling really brave, a DS or a Mahindra or a Nissan could full of surprise.
There is a horse called Galore. There isn't a horse called Bugsby Galore. So if it's
Galore,
competing,
I made it up.
If he made it up and he's still got Galore,
if it's competing in Cheltenham, I'm putting a couple quid on it.
The fact that it sounded like a horse, right? It sounded like a horse, Galore. And the fact that you found it,
horses' names
just shows that Ed has got some special.
I'm psychic.
Predicting skills here.
Like you could get 2 random words, put it together, and that could be the name of a horse, really. That's genuinely what names the horses. That's why I love watching horse racing commentary, because you just get words in sentences that you will never hear anywhere else.
I love this show. We're now talking about horse racing.
No, this isn't the preview for the Sao Paulo E-Prix. This is the preview for the Cheltenham Gold Cup.
Yes. And if you're in whatever country and you don't know what we're talking about, then I apologize. But I know there's horse racing in many other countries. But for me, I don't know what's going to happen, but I have a feeling I think Jaguar are quick, and I think the long straights and the powertrain is going to suit Jaguar. I think, especially coming out of the hairpin, I think they're probably one of the better ones on acceleration, and I'm kind of making that up, but just from the naked eye, I think Jaguar. So I'm going to say Mitch Evans, right, will be probably for me. They're going to finally get their luck together, Jaguar, and pick up a race win in Sao Paulo. So I'm going to say Mitch Evans for me to win the race. Pico, what do you expect to see?
I'm expecting Shishkin at 16-1 to win the Cheltenham Gold Cup. No, this for Sao Paulo. Sao Paulo, I think I'm going to go for Antonio Felix Da Costa again. I think he's in good form. I think that Brazil is like it's basically like a second home because they speak Portuguese there. So I reckon that he'll be
right at home.
He will feel like he's at home, and so he will do well. Antonio Felix Da Costa.
There we go. I think it's just going to be wild. Like, we could have 2 weeks ago, 3 weeks, or a couple of weeks ago, we could have been coming into this preview thinking, right, where is Jake Dennis going to outmuscle Pascal Wehrlein? What's the difference between the 2 cars? What evidence do we have to see who's better in the corners and so forth, and what to expect, and really go on that narrative. But the season's kind of been blown out of the water, and we're back to square one, where you don't know what's going to happen. And
yeah,
I suppose it's great going to a live event and rocking up as we do and going, I don't know who's going to win today. Which is it's a nice feeling in a sense, Ed.
Oh, certainly. And with Jake Dennis, it's a bit weird because the last two races, he got taken out in Hyderabad by Rene Rast. And then there was the tire pressure thing in Cape Town, both of which he couldn't really have done anything about. And I think he was having great races in both instances before those two things affected him. So, yeah, in fact, I didn't say which driver I was going to go for. I think I'll go for Jake Dennis because I feel like he's going to qualify the best of all the Porsche powertrains. And I think that's going to be crucial.
Let's talk Pico before we end. Attack mode, right? We've had a couple of races now with this like new format. I want to ask, do you think it's improved the strategic element of the race, or has them picking and having that 4 minutes and having 4 minutes and picking it the previous way, do you think that had a more strategic element? Because I'm a bit 50-50 on attack mode at the moment. It seems like potentially have a bit more strategic element. I don't know which way is kind of better. I think they're both a bit 50-50, so I'd like your idea on that.
Well, I'm going to sit on the fence with you. There are pros and cons to it, really. I think it's nice that they've changed it so you can either choose 3-1, 2-2, or 1-3. But I at the same time, because in Gen 2 you got 8 minutes of attack mode throughout the entire race. Whereas this you only get 4, and that means that you get less time to make moves and get yourself back up the field to where you were before you took attack mode. So I think the drivers and teams will see attack mode more as like a hindrance now than an opportunity to go for a potential win. It would just mean that you're losing time, and then you won't have that time to go to make it up again. So like how we saw in Diria, where they took the attack mode activation zone, if they only took 1 minute, you wouldn't get back round to the front straight in time to do the to try and make an overtake, because you couldn't overtake through that downhill slalom section. And so yeah, I think it makes it more interesting, but at the same time, I can see why I think it's more the teams and drivers that are a bit more opposed to it at the moment.
Interesting thoughts. So, I think that is pretty much it. I had something that I wanted to say, but
Can I give some thoughts on
my brain can't
mode?
think of go for it while I try
okay,
to think
gives
of
you
what
some
I wanted to
thinking
say.
time. I was going to say, I feel like a lot of it links in with the attack charge, which is, of course, the fast charging thing that they originally planned to have in at the start of the season, couldn't, because the idea is once you go into that, you have more usable energy to play with when you come out the pit lane, and B, you also get another allocation of attack mode to use, I think, so you get the full 4 minutes again. So that is the idea of spreading out the 2 8 minutes if for the cars that do choose to use the attack charge, because I guess there is an option to just stay out and hope that the guys that pit don't catch up with you with the more usable energy at their disposal. So we're yet to know exactly when that's going to take place, whether the technology is quite there yet to use it sort of reliably. We think it's still going to be Jakarta sort of Berlin sort of time, I think, is what Pico was saying a few weeks ago. So I think I'll stick with that. but yeah, I definitely think I like the strategic variance. I think I'm a big fan of that. But I feel like it would be more exciting if there was a bit more wilder variance, because the guys that go, often when you see them just take attack mode for 1 minute, especially at places like Cape Town, it barely made any difference. They went into it, you looked a few seconds later and they'd already used it and not used it to do very much. So I feel like giving them a bit more time to play with will lead to more strategy variation and also more drama as those strategies converge.
I remembered. So we need a theme tune, because it's the Formula E bashing moment. Because I wanted to end, because we were talking about attack mode, and when we went into attack mode, we had those blue lights to let us know that someone was in attack mode, and now they're on all the time, and you don't know what the hell's going on and who's in attack mode, and you can't really tell.
It's like a Christmas tree.
Yeah, it just turned the lights off. I think that all irritates us a little bit. I don't know if that's the same with you guys at home. I'd be really interested to find out, because I think we got so used to Gen 2 knowing that the blue light meant they were in attack mode, but now we're just seeing these blue lights all the time, but lads, and you don't know. You think, he's not in attack mode. I'll be quiet.
there is an article which if you go onto it, just translate it through Google Chrome or something. But our lovely colleagues at Eformal D, they wrote a thing with 5 things that Formula E need to change, and that was one of the 5, because it is literally like a lottery at the moment. Last year it made sense. If your light goes blue, well done, you're in attack mode. And this is something that I worked out in Valencia, because they were doing the test race there, and some cars had blue lights on, some cars didn't, and I just thought, oh, they're in attack mode. And then after Rene Rast had been in attack mode for about 12 minutes, I kind of went, something's not right here. But yeah, it means nothing now. The lights genuinely mean nothing. So if Formula E would like to give a purpose to the lights again, that would be great. If not, it's just wasting power, really, isn't it?
I'm sure the teams don't want to power these lights on their car.
Formula E is supposed to be like this, like green thing saving the world, and we got useless lights on for no reason. So yeah, makes no sense.
Not cost efficient whatsoever, eh? And on that bombshell, I probably shouldn't have said that, but anyway, but on that Formula E bashing moment, I think it's time to end, boys. Thank you so much again, as always, for your input in today's show.
Thank you.
Thank you for letting me live another day longer and not putting a fatwa or a hit out on me.
Right, so enjoy the Sao Paulo E-Prix, which takes place next week, and then we'll be back to review all the action from that, and then look ahead for the remaining races of the season. Already it's March already. Can you believe it? The season's already it'll be over before you know it. Let's not wish time away though. But thank you so much for watching, and we will see you very soon. Goodbye.